It's time for TigerNet Talk with L. Swan.
You know, that's why Carolina's in Chapel Hill and USC's in California. And the university in this state always has been, always will be, Clemson. Print that, tweet that.
And I hope they come in undefeated. That's what I told you before the game. Our team believes. Our team believes. They got heart. We got greatness in us. They say we can't do it. What they say now?
Down go the Champs. Auburn's 17-game win streak comes to an end.
Welcome back into another edition of TigerNet Talk. I'm your host, Lawton Swan, broadcasting live here on the front page of TigerNet.com and on Vocal, that's VOKLE.com. As you are aware, there have been some issues with Vocal, some things going on. It's kind of flaky at times. I apologize. I have no control over it. Well, technically, I have no control over Vocal. I do have control over where we distribute our content from. They've been very gracious to us throughout the years. We will probably continue to give them a shot unless things don't improve significantly. I may attempt a show on another network later, either Spreecast or maybe I go back to Ustream for a little while until Vocal gets things ironed out. Really like their format, but they've had some issues, and they know it, and it's just gotten to the point where it's become a little bit frustrating for me. We've got Chris, Vicky, Clemson, Tom, and more in the chat room. Come on in and join us. The number of ways you can participate with us here on the program, let me tell you how. Hashtag TN Talk. That's hashtag TN Talk for all you people who enjoy Twitter. Phone lines are open, 803-450-0086. 803-450-0086. And I had some issues with the phone lines earlier, but they are up and running. And if you want to reach us, that's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Or you can go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com, and on the side there, send a voicemail. That's 24 hours a day, too. We've got Tommy checking into the chat room. Tommy Chastain, follow him on Twitter. I really do appreciate everybody being here. Tommy says he can't see us, but he can hear us. That's probably a good thing. I think most people would prefer to take in the program that way. A lot to get to here on the program, and I really do appreciate you stopping by. I can tell you what, this weekend for Clemson, a big opportunity as they travel on the road to Duke. It's kind of odd that we're doing the show on a Thursday. I know that throws some of you off just a little bit, but we had to do it. I mean, Halloween's a very important holiday. The son wanted to go out trick-or-treating, have a good time. You know, when you're 3.5 years old, Halloween can't be much better than what it was, so he had to go out. Of course, that leaves me in charge of the younger one, the young daughter, and giving out candy at the door. So it was either my choice was do a show or be a family man. I hate to say that I yielded towards family man for one evening for you guys. And ladies, I did it for all of you. Now, Clemson, if they can get a victory here against Duke, will move to 8-1 on the season. Last year, after a loss on the road at Georgia Tech, you were 8-1. You can't afford to close out 3-5 again. Losing 3 out of the 5 final games of the season again this year and have people feel like it's been a successful campaign. This is a real opportunity, I think, this year for Clemson to finish up winning every game remaining during the regular season and play for a very nice bowl game. Whether it's a BCS bowl game, whether Virginia Tech can find a way to defeat Florida State next Thursday night, that would really help get Clemson into the BCS mix. But the way Virginia Tech's playing right now, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to handle Florida State. This is not your Virginia Tech team of old. This doesn't look anything like a Frank Beamer coach team. Mistakes abound in the special teams game for them. But we'll see as that game rolls on what happens during the program. But if your Clemson team could finish with only one blemish, whether they play in the Atlantic Coast Conference game or not, that's a very special season. Having the remaining games at home is huge. My question to you is this, and I want to pose this to the chat room. Are you willing, as fans of Clemson University, to sacrifice an Atlantic Coast Conference championship in lieu of playing perhaps a better bowl game? Maybe playing in the Sugar Bowl against a team maybe like Georgia. Are you willing to give up the Atlantic Coast Conference Championship for a better BCS game. Even if in both scenarios you only lose one game on the season. That's a big thing to think about right now, because going to the Orange Bowl and playing against a lackluster opponent from the Big Least. Now, last season, we know what happened. But going against a team like that in that bowl game doesn't exactly make newsstands nationally. It's not going to jump off the page. It's not going to be one of the major bowl games. But if you're Clemson and Georgia and you're in the Sugar Bowl and you're kicking off the season next year, Tommy in the chat room says, no, he wants a championship, bro. That's why we play. Hardware. I can't really tell you how to feel. I can tell you what I would like to see happen, and that's Clemson to be able to play in a more appealing BCS bowl game, a game that's going to get real national attention. But I know how valuable those Atlantic Coast Conference championships are because we went so long without getting one. There's so much invested by these players each and every week on the field in conference play, whether you think our conference is good or bad. There is so much invested by these players every week that you hate to see an opportunity slip away from them, a chance to make a name for themselves and put that down in the record book, because you don't get put down in the record book for nothing. You got to go out and win that BCS bowl game, or it's a meaningless game to a lot of people. But that Atlantic Coast Conference Championship, that goes up on the wall. That's something you can talk about. That's something you can beat your chest about. It's nice, though, if you don't go on to get blown out 70-33 in the Orange Bowl. Charles writes in and is talking a little bit about the SEC and the ACC and some of that ESPN hype. He says he's not arguing that the SEC doesn't have the best chance to have a team play the national championship because they always have one or two dominant teams. But for the most part, those are only rotated between a few select schools, such as Alabama, Florida, LSU. And then you had a few years ago when Auburn slipped in the mix. But when you look at total offense in the ACC, there are 4 teams. This was going into the Wake Forest game. In the top 20 in America, Florida State, Georgia Tech, Clemson, and NC State. In North Carolina. In the SEC, there were only 2, Texas A&M and Georgia. SEC fans will tell you that's because of the great defense over in the SEC. And you look at it in the SEC's total defense, there are 4 teams in the top 20. Alabama, Florida, LSU, and South Carolina, all in the top 10, mind you. And only 2 teams in the ACC going into that Wake Forest game, Florida State and Maryland. So the ACC has twice as many teams in the top 25 in offense as the SEC, but the SEC has twice as many defensive teams in the top 20. So he's not sure how you make the argument that the SEC teams try to make, that they're so much stronger on defense that it's harder to be a top offense, because in the ACC you've got all these top offenses, so it makes it hard to be a top defense. Now there are no teams, he says, in the SEC on the same level as Alabama and LSU and Florida on a year-in, year-out basis, which contributes to those teams being undefeated every year because of the difference in talent level at those schools, whereas the top teams in the ACC, like Clemson, Florida State, and Virginia Tech, maybe aren't as distanced from the Georgia Techs, the Miamis, the North Carolinas, and the NC States of the world. Charles goes on to say that Clemson scheduled schools like Auburn and South Carolina. Obviously, that's always on the schedule, but the Auburn game was supposed to be one of the powerful teams. Auburn was supposed to have a great defense this year. I mean, he makes a lot of sense when you say, if you're going to argue that your defense is so great, that's why you don't have the big offensive numbers. In the ACC, you've got offensive numbers. Maybe that's why you don't have those big defensive numbers. But I do think the biggest point he makes is I think there's a big disparity in the SEC between Alabama, LSU. I'm not even going to throw Florida in there right now, or Georgia, or South Carolina, than there are in the rest of those teams in that conference. And we'll find out, obviously, this weekend with that Alabama-LSU game. If it's just a complete and utter blowout for Alabama, then maybe there's only one true dominant SEC team. I think a lot of people would love to get on national TV against a team like Alabama or LSU right now. Vince checks in. We've got Shant checking in. Shant's one of the lead guys over at the Vocal Group. Appreciate him stopping by the program. And finally, before we get out here to our first break to kind of wrap this up, this ACC-SEC battle, I'll be honest with you. When we heard about the hire of Dan Radakovich as the athletic director, I wasn't exactly overwhelmed. But I can also say that I feel like because of some of the places he's been, maybe it's a good hire down the road for Clemson. We'll talk about that, and perhaps he can settle an argument for us all. We'll be right back. We'll let some Tigers take you out the break with this one. Stay with us.
Can't you tell that we ballin'? And these boys can't hold us back. 81 championship, and best believe we going back. Clemson, we all in. One team with one dream.
We're on the quest for the best, and we can't let anything hold us back.
These boys can't hold us back. These boys can't hold us back.
Enjoy the Clemson football season at Seasons by the Lake Restaurant. Tiger Tailgate on the Terrace at Seasons Restaurant will be held every Clemson football game day, rain or shine, home or away, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for those day games and noon to midnight for the evening kickoffs. Enjoy a large screen TV, a Bloody Mary and mimosa bar, specialty drinks, and a great tailgate menu, all on the Seasons Terrace. For more information, call 656-7444 or visit their Facebook page, facebook.com/Seasons by the Lake. I hope to see you on the terrace.
We scoop the boot, dutycalls.com. When nobody else will do it, dutycalls.com. To make that dog poop go away, call or click for a free quote today.
When nature calls, we answer. To get a free quote for dog poop removal, go to dutycalls.com now.
DOODYCALLS. Dutycalls.com.
In the Midlands area, dial 1-800-DUTY-CALLS. They're number one and number two. G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services through football season. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove. Are you a landowner who owns more than 10 acres that's interested in selling timber or pulpwood off your property? Cross Creek Timber is a full-service timber procurement company that buys standing saw timber and pulpwood. They're staffed with professional licensed foresters and fully insured with both workers' comp and general liability insurance. Let Cross Creek Timber develop the appropriate harvesting plan for your property and answer any questions regarding forest management. Call today, 864-517-3620. That's 864-517-3620 for your free woodland evaluation, or visit www.crosscreektimber.com.
I thought I'd grow up and I'd settle down. There was 10,000 girls up in Tiger Town, and it was heaven to me.
Welcome back into TigerNet Talk. Once again, broadcasting on a Thursday this week. Wednesday nights, though, 9 p.m. That's our start time typically. 803-450-0086 is the phone line. 803-450-0086. That's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can give us a call. We've got a ton of people in the chat room having a big time there, clamoring for it. They want me to say the word. I will get to it later in the program. I did a test run of the hoodie with this headgear on. I'm going to need about a triple XL hoodie to slip on over these big earphones. I know I have big ears, but these big earphones are a sight to behold. Although most of you like the size of the mic. I know. The mic is impressive. The boom mic is huge, says Clemson Tom. And if you're wondering how they know what I look like, well, that's because we got the video running on Vocal right now, VOKLE.com. Come on in, check us out. Would certainly appreciate you being here with us. I know these guys would like some more people in there. Tom said there were more people in the chat room than at the Miami and Virginia Tech game. That is so sad, isn't it? I mean, obviously, because it's Miami, it makes you feel good because you know that's a team that won 5 national championships in the 1980s, a team that had the potential when they came into the Atlantic Coast Conference to be a dominant team. And really, if they could ever get back to their old ways, and if Virginia Tech could straighten out the issues they have, we talked about the SEC and the ACC. If you could finally get Florida State, Virginia Tech, Miami, and Clemson playing at an elite level, and Georgia Tech right there behind them, that's a fairly nice conference of football. That's a good conference each and every week. There are great games going on. Unfortunately, Miami hasn't held up their end of the deal at all. Now, in this ball game against Virginia Tech right now, they are holding up their end of the deal. But they haven't done it consistently in this league, and that's a very odd thing. That almost could be an example of what we just talked about with maybe in Alabama in the SEC. Was Miami just that much better than everybody in the Big East when they were over there, except for maybe, say, Virginia Tech? Is that why Miami was so good for so long? The conference they were playing in. I know the SEC's good. I'm not saying that. That probably came out the wrong way. Anyhow, speaking of the SEC, Clemson gets a good hire in athletic director Dan Radakovich, who comes over from Georgia Tech. He spent 6 years at Georgia Tech from 2006 to 2012, and there weren't a lot of people fired up about the hire initially when it came out. But if you dig a little deeper into some of his background, if you just dig in there just a little bit, I think you'll be mildly intrigued with the fact that this guy is a major generator of revenue. You know, at Georgia Tech, he was constantly fighting this battle of support. Much like maybe the people in Miami feel, Georgia Tech is constantly battling whether they're good or not the Hawks, whether they're good or not the Falcons, whether they're good or not the Braves, plus everything else there is to do in a city like Atlanta. But when I look, and right now for me, I don't know if everybody's chatting or not, but nothing's going on in the chat room. It looks a little quiet in there. Crickets in the chat room. But when you look at the difference in the support that Georgia Tech has and what Clemson has, it's fairly evident that people are going to be very supportive at a school like Clemson. It's a small town feel. It's a campus that you just fall in love with. You don't fall in love with Georgia Tech's campus. There are not a lot of people walking around going, you know, the thing about Georgia Tech, the thing that strikes me the most is the elegance of the campus. It's one of those scenarios where they're in such a large city, you would expect there would be major support, but because of that and because of the competition, there's not. And Radakovich had to go out and constantly fight. He won't have to fight to get donations into Clemson. The donations are ready to be poured in to the right person. And I know there's been some disgust maybe for a guy like Terry Don Phillips at times. And I think you have the right as a fan and someone who supports the program. If you donate to IBTE, if you give a lot of money for seats, you have the right to complain. I would never tell you don't have the right to complain. But Terry Don Phillips did some good things. And I really think we got headed in the right direction in a lot of areas. But maybe not some of the Olympic sports, and that's disappointed a lot of people. Dan Radakovich may be able to come in, not only bring in more money to the football program, but increase the money that comes in for the other programs and get them headed back up. Women's soccer, men's soccer, these sports that were great not that long ago down in the dumps. It would be nice to see them return. Here's the thing. This is a guy who was at LSU when they won the national championship in football. He raised over $90 million for stadium renovations at LSU. And while I don't think he's a guy who jumped off the page, like I said, I don't think he's a guy who jumped off the page. You've got a real chance here to improve on some things that have really, when I look back to the way the campus looked and the way the stadium looked when I started school, things are just unbelievable. The West Zone has done so much for Clemson. Chris also makes note he was there when LSU's baseball team won the national championship as well. And it's not like LSU is a program that's been in the shambles in baseball. They're one of the national top teams each and every year. The football program's been great for a long time. And, in fact, they had a couple of runs. I'd have to check the dates on this. I believe he was at South Carolina during this time. But LSU had a run to the Final Four as well. So, I mean, if there's some programs you want to model yourself after, it's obviously the Floridas of the world. I don't know enough about UCLA, but it would be nice to be a contender in so many sports like UCLA seems to find their way in. Maybe even like a Texas, who you see with baseball, football, and basketball being very powerful. There are a few programs out there you really want to model yourself around. LSU could be one of those. When I look finally, though, at the end of the day, perhaps the biggest thing that Dan Radakovich could do for Clemson and Clemson fans is end this silly Death Valley argument between LSU and Clemson. Can we get a final word? Let me tell you, if I can get Radakovich on the show, that's question one. Iron that one out for me, please, Chief, because I'm sick and tired of ESPN and College Football Now or College Football Today or whatever the little programs are they have, that out of a 3-hour program are about 2 hours and 25 minutes of SEC hype machine and calling LSU's home stadium Death Valley and never calling Clemson's that. I'm fed up with every time I flip over. And if it didn't sicken me enough, I'd sit down and I'd actually time it to see how much time they spend, instead of being ESPN, being the SEC network. You know, the SEC has their own network already. They don't need you in addition to that, ESPN, but I know you got your grubby little hands in on that league, and so every day I got to hear from some Alabama offensive lineman telling me about how great Alabama is. Then I got to see their defensive lineman telling me about how great their defense is. Then I got to go see Nick Saban driving out of his home with some girl. Then I got to go see Les Miles driving out of his home with some girl at 7 a.m., some reporter. You know, the last time a coach in the SEC rode around with some girl in the back of a Harley, it didn't end up so well for him. That's all I'm saying. But I do think that this guy, in all seriousness, Dan Radakovich, could be a very good hire for Clemson. I think he's pretty young, energetic. He's going to be out there. I mean, he's no young whippersnapper, but he's much younger than Terry Don Phillips. I think he's probably going to be more engaging. And I think sometimes where Terry Don Phillips came across to some people as kind of the country, good. There's nothing wrong with that, but maybe the kind of from the good fella kind of, maybe even though he's a doctor, not all that intelligent, just is the way he came across. It's not to say he's like that. It's the way he came across. Radakovich, however, came across very slick, very commanding, and I think he's a guy who can really help Clemson. Now, finally, before we go to another break here, I wanted to look, because I think when we talk about striving to be a team, a lot of us feel like we want to be a little bit like Oregon offensively. Tommy in the chat room says, Steve Spurrier says that Alabama could beat an NFL team. Yeah, right. Well, maybe the Carolina Panthers. They're atrocious. They are. But you know what? I figure if Alabama couldn't beat Auburn with Cam Newton, how would they beat the Carolina Panthers with Cam Newton? Somehow Cam Newton would find a way, right? Doesn't he have their number? I think he does. But I wanted to look and just compare Clemson's offense and Oregon's defense. Let me tell you about a site, statmilk.com. Chad sent it to us the other day. It's beautiful. Statmilk.com. I went in there, put in Clemson versus Oregon. I can tell you this. Clemson does exceptionally well scoring in the second quarter of ball games. Clemson in the second quarter of games this year has scored 135 points. That's the most far and away of any other quarter. 67 in the first, 58 in the third, 68 in the fourth quarter. And out of 32 quarters this season, Clemson scored in 30. One of those that they didn't score in was that third quarter against Wake Forest, and part of the reason that we didn't get to rest our starters. But listen to what Oregon does in the first quarter. 162 points, almost 100 more points than Clemson. You talk about a team who puts a game on ice early. it's Oregon. And by the half, when you total it all up, that 162 that they have in the first quarter, added to what they do in the second quarter, 128, you're talking about 290 points this season by the half. Oregon gets on fire. And you would think maybe it's the passing game, but when you look at the passing numbers, that's not the case. Oregon does it on the ground. Tajh Boyd has superior numbers to Marcus Mariota out at Oregon. But rushing the ball, Kenyon Barner is unbelievable. DeAnthony Thomas, fantastic. Quick speed. I mean, those guys. Kenyon Barner has 14 touchdowns already this season, 974 yards. He averages 10 yards a carry. Wide receiving core, though, Clemson's blowing them away. DeAndre Hopkins has more receiving yards than Oregon's top 5 wide receivers, just doing the quick math in my head. I mean, that's how much better Clemson's offense has been through the air. Points scored, though, Oregon, the top team in the land. But here's where you kind of get into some of the grinded-out numbers. Oregon scores about every 12 plays. Clemson scores every 16. Not a huge difference there. But when you factor that out over a game, it's pretty significant. Average yards per play, Oregon gets 6.6. Your Tigers get 6.2. Third down conversions, Clemson, one of the top teams in the nation. They get 53%. Oregon only gets 50%. Turnover ratio, both teams very good. 8 to the positive for your Tigers, 6 to the positive this year for Oregon. But defensively, Oregon has been much better than Clemson's defense this entire season. But we've seen marked improvement. Perhaps that's been because of the schedule. Perhaps that's been because this Clemson Tiger team is finally coming into their own a little bit with this system that Brent Venables has inputted. We'll talk about that when we come back. Plus, the big mouth in the South, Steve Spurrier, can't keep his trap shut when he needs to in a moment that could have gone down as one of his better moments. Instead, he finds a way to ruin it. We'll talk about that and much more right here on TigerNet Talk. Stay with us.
Sunsets, I wanted to be just like Jeff Davis when I grew up, tackling Seminoles and Bulldogs, playing football in the mud. So everybody sing Tiger Rag at the top of your lungs, and we'll party like it's 1981.
Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote, 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that. Take your business to the next level with innovative website design from Foodog Media. Foodog can handle all your web, graphic, and social media needs. Call them today, 843-864-9268. That's 843-864-9268. Mention this ad and receive 10% off of your website. Foodog is a Clemson-owned business. See their portfolio at www.foodogmedia.net. May the food be with you.
Hate the thought of shopping? All that hassle and can't find what you're looking for anyway? We understand. Retail stores make it difficult. Instead, try www.edistooutdoors.com. Edisto Outdoors features performance apparel and gear engineered for performance, comfort, and style. EdistoOutdoors.com. You'll enjoy the shopping and you'll enjoy the products. Great products from people who care.
G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services through football season. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove.
We turned up, we run down the hill, we so turned up. Rock the rock, hit the field, no competition, we first up. Offense is too fast, defense defense ain't scared, boy. Line up against me, we drop you on your head, boy. Death Valley be jumping, whole stadium pumping. Best fans in the whole nation, and damn right we love them. C-L-E-M-S-O-N. We Clemson, we ballin', we all in.
Woo, man. Martin Jenkins, Darius Robinson. If you hadn't seen it, Yoda, Martin Jenkins, put that together. It is an unbelievable video. I know a lot of you maybe don't like rap music, hip-hop, whatever. That's fine. But when you talk about the video quality of what they put together, pretty crazy. Unbelievable how good that video is. It looks like it could be something on, I was about to say MTV, but MTV really doesn't show videos anymore, so I guess it's MTV2. Appreciate everybody being here on TigerNet Talk with us once again. We'll be back next week, Wednesday night, 9 p.m., and, of course, this Sunday night, 9 p.m., your first chance to really talk about your Clemson Tigers and what they do on the road at Duke, a game which we haven't quite focused on today. Funny. You would think we would be focused on the Duke team that's, they're bowl-bound already. They have really surprised the ACC. Most people didn't have them going to a bowl this year. They get Clemson at home in a night game for the first time ever. In fact, the only other time Clemson and Duke have played at night, it was only at night in the United States while they were playing in Japan. So it was like a 9:30 kickoff at night, but technically a day game, a Saturday day game, I believe it was, in Japan. And we talked about this Clemson Tiger defense. They have really improved over the past few games. Going into that Virginia Tech game a couple of weeks ago, they were ranked 69th in America in scoring defense. They're up to 51st already. That's a significant improvement. They've done a really good job over the last couple of ball games in slowing teams down. And I said it before and I'll say it again. You've got to stop giving up garbage points. That's key to being successful in college football. I don't care how many points you put up. You can't continue to allow teams to score random touchdowns because there is a magic number. I'm telling you, there is a legitimate magic number. And it's, if you hit 300, you're not winning the national championship most likely. If you give up 300 points in a season, you're probably not going to win a national championship. We may be one of the few teams in Oregon that have the offense to overcome something like that. Most people don't. Even the Alabamas of the world, the LSUs of the world, they rely on keeping teams at or below 200 points total on the season, and it's a fair goal. And I'm going to stick with my guns on that one. After looking through hundreds of records, that's what I've come up with. That's where you have to be successful. Steve Spurrier, in a momentary lapse of judgment in my mind, after losing their star player to a hideous, horrific injury, an injury that was painful to watch, when we addressed it on Clemson Hotline on Sunday night, we just talked about how bad you felt and how the issues were compounded. But I told you as a Clemson fan, if you didn't send a letter to any Clemson players who have been out for the season, if you didn't send a letter to Tony Stewart last year, you don't have to feel compelled to send one to Marcus Lattimore because he's rehabbed and because he's gotten back. And that's not to say that you're a bad fan. And I don't think you're a bad fan if you did send him a card. But when Coach Dabo Swinney comes out and openly says how great Marcus Lattimore is, what a class kid he is, and everybody goes out to celebrate Marcus Lattimore in it, and as Steve Spurrier did point out, this was not a memorial service, and I said that on Clemson Hotline. He wasn't dead. He's not paralyzed. He'll still have a chance to play, maybe not at the level he once did. But Steve Spurrier, in his infinite wisdom, found a way to mess that up with a moment just like this.
A lot of quotes came across from the nation, and I read one today from the head coach at our upstate school. You know, that school that used to beat us a lot, that doesn't beat us much anymore. Anyway, usually when that coach up there talks about South Carolina, it's a bunch of garbage and a bunch of BS usually. But I have to agree with him. I have to agree with him on what he said the other day. He said Marcus Lattimore stands for what's right about college football.
And Steve Spurrier stands for what's wrong about egotistical people who have an inferiority complex about that upstate school, who, when they came to Carolina, took down all the beat Clemson stuff because he said that's not the goal. But for whatever reason, even though he's been 3-0 against Clemson the past 3 years and handled Clemson, I should say, on 3 straight occasions, he absolutely is still obsessed with Clemson University. If you can't go into that moment and call Dabo Swinney by his name, if you can't go into that moment and recognize Clemson as a university in the state of South Carolina, you are out of touch. And like I said, you have an inferiority complex. You can't get past the fact that the things Dabo Swinney said about your school at the beginning of our show and last year, while to a lot of Clemson people were taken like, I can't believe our coach just said that after we've been beaten, those things are the truth. And it's obvious that it still bothers Steve Spurrier. And possibly the fact that every year, I think Spurrier started buying into something that many Gamecock fans have bought into for a long time, that this is the year that they're going to win the national title. This was the year that they were going to play for the SEC East, or they were going to win the SEC East and play for the SEC championship again. And it didn't happen. He stole Marcus's moment, a young man who was celebrating his birthday. The crowd there, if you heard them, didn't seem overly pumped. And finally, the last thing I'm ever going to say about this moment, this Marcus Lattimore day that Governor Nikki Haley gave him, the thing I'll say about that is, and I said it on Twitter and had a ton of retweets about it, when are we going to give a day to each and every one of the fallen South Carolina citizens who were soldiers in Iraq, in Afghanistan? And I don't mean Veterans Day. I don't mean Memorial Day. I mean an individual day for every single one of those. When is George Bugs going to have George Bugs Day in South Carolina? And every other countless citizen who died for our freedom. If we think it's so important on Marcus Lattimore's birthday, after an injury on the field, to give him a day, then perhaps we need to reevaluate our values in our country and in our state. I'm not saying this kid didn't do things the right way, that he's not a classy individual, that he's not a kid that I would want my son or somebody else to aspire to be. Because I don't think he's done anything off the field for you to question him in that regard. And while, as Spurrier goes on, he does clean it up a little bit and makes a lot of sense because he does say the great things that Dabo Swinney said, for Nikki Haley to then declare it Marcus Lattimore Day in South Carolina was a complete and utter joke. And I was sickened by the fact that we've gotten to that point. Just disgusted me. Now, let me tell you ways, though, that Clemson fans and Carolina fans can work together. Tigers, you can help to save up to 3 lives. The 28th annual Clemson USC Blood Drive will take place from Monday, November 12th through Friday, November 16th from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. There will be multiple locations across Clemson's campus, including the Palmetto Ballroom and the Student Union, the Hendrick Center, and several blood mobiles. 1 unit of blood can save up to 3 lives, so come show your Clemson spirit and help our local hospitals and also beat the South Carolina Gamecocks in the blood drive. They have been on quite a roll as of late. Back in the day, Clemson used to dominate it, but the Gamecocks have built a little chip on their shoulder, not only in the blood drive, but on the field. And I told you as we came out of that game last year down in Columbia, when we did the show on Sunday, Clemson Hotline, you've got to want it a little bit more. And I think the fire is burning in the belly of Clemson fans. You don't want to look ahead through games like Maryland, like NC State, like Duke, towards that South Carolina game. But I think you all realize the importance of finally getting that win, because it has been far too long, longer than many of us ever remember, much longer than in my lifetime. In fact, again, you have to go back to the 1950s before you find a 4-game South Carolina winning streak against our Clemson Tigers. I don't think any of us want to live through that again. Final segment of the show, prediction, stats, everything about the Duke Blue Devils and your Clemson Tigers, plus the Xbox 360 prediction right after these messages. Stay with us.
Like a candy ball and chain. It wasn't nothing she ever thought about. Didn't know it was gone the day she moved out. In my head, if I pointed it just right. We scoop the boot, dutycalls.com. When nobody else will do it, dutycalls.com. To make that dog poop go away, call or click for a free quote today.
When nature calls, we answer. To get a free quote for dog poop removal, go to dutycalls.com now.
DOODYCALLS. Dutycalls.com.
In the Midlands area, dial 1-800-DUTY-CALLS. They're number 1 and number 2. Enjoy the Clemson football season at Seasons by the Lake Restaurant. Tiger Tailgate on the Terrace at Seasons Restaurant will be held every Clemson football game day, rain or shine, home or away, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. for those day games and noon to midnight for the evening kickoffs. Enjoy a large screen TV, a Bloody Mary and mimosa bar, specialty drinks, and a great tailgate menu, all on the Seasons Terrace. For more information, call 656-7444. or visit their Facebook page, facebook.com/Seasons by the Lake. I hope to see you on the terrace. Take your business to the next level with innovative website design from Foodog Media. Foodog can handle all your web, graphic, and social media needs. Call them today, 843-864-9268. That's 843-864-9268. Mention this ad and receive 10% off of your website. Foodog is a Clemson-owned business. See their portfolio at www.foodogmedia.net. May the food be with you. Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote. 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that. Hey there, Clemson Tiger fans. If you're interested in advertising with Clemson Podcasts, go to ClemsonPodcasts.com and click on the advertising link. And as always, go Tigers!
Hit them hard, lay them down, do it for your town. Clemson football, they be shutting it down. Chad Kelly QB, repping for his team. You can hate him, you can love him, you ain't stopping the dream. Hit them hard, lay them down, do it for my town. Clemson Tigers, they be shutting you down. Chad Kelly QB, repping for his team. You can hate him, you can doubt him, you ain't stopping.
Swag Kelly in the house, had the hoodie on as we came back from break. The chat room is on fire. Appreciate you being here. 803-450-0086. Had to run out of the studio for a minute to get my prediction, my PS3 pick that comes to us each and every week from my main man Sammy. Not Watkins, O'Neal. Maybe one day Sammy Watkins will send me the prediction of the games. Sammy O'Neal does a great job for us, though, and I appreciate him listening each and every week. And everybody in the chat room thought that duty called as I had to run out of the room, but the reason I had to run out of the room was because I had to get these stats. So we'll get to that momentarily. Clemson's offense, I mentioned the wide receivers a moment ago, and I said just a few weeks ago, Watkins, Hopkins, if they never made another catch, they'd be the greatest duo Clemson's ever had. In fact, after Sammy's unbelievable performance against Wake Forest, those two guys have actually had the top 2 days receiving in Clemson history in 4 weeks. And they've got 4 of the top 9 games in history right now. And DeAndre Hopkins tied a Clemson school record in that game, as well as the fact that you had Sammy Watkins and Tajh Boyd both break Clemson records in that for the 5th consecutive game, he had a touchdown catch tying Aaron Kelly and Derek Hamilton. Hopkins is on a tremendous pace this year to break records that it took other wide receivers 4 seasons to do, and records that because of his absence in 4 games this year, Sammy Watkins may struggle to break some of these records that DeAndre Hopkins sets at least in 3 seasons. That's how good DeAndre Hopkins has been this year. And these guys have been on fire. In Clemson's last 22 games, in which Watkins has only played 18 because of the suspensions and the injuries or sicknesses, they've combined for 244 receptions, 3,510 yards, and 28 touchdowns. That's about 11 receptions, 160 yards, and 1.3 touchdowns per game. They have been on fire. And those guys are a serious, serious weapon for any offense. And for Clemson, they are the reason that this team continues to click. As nice of a job as Tajh Boyd has done, without guys like Watkins and Hopkins, his job would get a lot tougher. Jennifer checks into the chat room, gives a little shout out to my wife. Her husband tells her that she's working her tail off at the gym, and she does. I told you guys about Grant over there at the CrossFit. Man, my wife is all over it. And you know what? I get time with the kids, which is important and valuable. Because as a father, I'll tell you, it's very easy to pass that off to your wife. So I actually enjoy the time that I get to spend with my children. This Clemson defense has improved, as we mentioned. They've allowed just 12 out of 34 third down conversions and 1 out of 4 fourth down conversions, and only 1 rush of over 20 yards since 7 were given up against Georgia Tech, and that was a big issue early in the season, big plays. Clemson has done a fantastic job over the last few ball games. 8 sacks for 84 yards lost. The team had just 10 sacks in the first 6 games. You've seen improvement at the defensive front. For Duke right now, you don't know if Sean Renfrey is going to go. He had a mild concussion last week in the ball game. Questionable. Obviously, right now we still don't know what it's going to be. If Renfrey can't go, the quarterbacks behind him both have had a little bit of experience. They are much faster than he is. He's your prototypical pocket passer, 6'5", 220 pounds, maybe 230. Guy who can really throw the football around the field. David Cutcliffe, a quarterback guru, has done a great job at Duke. It's admirable the job they've done. I really am surprised at where they sit today. I actually said, though, I did say this, that I thought Duke had an opportunity to make it to a bowl game this season. I just didn't think they would have already had it clinched up coming into the game against Clemson. I thought they would have to pick up a game or two along the way at the end of the season, whether that was Georgia Tech on the road or Miami. But they've got it in the bag already. Now, one of the traits of a Tommy Bowden coach team was always the up and down nature of it. Maybe it's a roller coaster ride. You go and you beat a Miami, but you lose to a Duke. You can never get your feet flat on the ground. There's always some bump in the road that knocks you over. Maybe you lose to a bad Wake Forest team and to beat a top-ranked Florida State the next weekend to save your job. It's just one of those things that you can't put your finger on about a coach like Tommy Bowden. Why his teams could never hold that consistency. Well, we finally get to find out this weekend if Dabo Swinney's teams can be those type teams. Because you went up to a Wake Forest ball club, you got out early, you pulled back the reins a little bit, and you closed them out. That's what great teams do. 42-13, Clemson got it done against Wake Forest. And this Duke ball club is going to be intriguing because of how much they throw the football against Clemson's secondary, which has been lackluster this season. You can bet Duke is going to try to take advantage of the fact if Clemson runs man-to-man coverage on the outside of throwing the ball down the field and seeing if Clemson's secondary gets their head around and can make plays. Clemson leads the all-time series 35-16-1, but has won 8 of the last 9 since 1999. The last time that Duke beat Clemson, I was there. Sadly, one of the first road games I ever went to as a Clemson Tiger fan. Back in 1989, that was Danny Ford's last team at Clemson. They were 4-0 going into that game. They were a top-ranked team in the country, top 10 team, and came out there with a loss. That was also the first time I burnt the roof of my mouth on pizza. I realized a valuable lesson when I was 12 years old, to let your pizza cool. But Clemson has been the better team in this series, all in all, offensively, defensively. This team for Clemson, better players, better talent, all the skill positions everywhere across the field. This Tiger team is the better team on the field. But that was the case a lot of times for those same Tommy Bowden teams that we just talked about. The ones who, for whatever reason, could not get over the hump. And for this Clemson game to be a 13-point spread in Vegas says something to me about the belief in Vegas about this Clemson team and the history of Clemson in games like this. What does the PS3 think? Clemson gets a big victory in this one, 42-21. The PS3 says Tajh Boyd will throw 21-35, 331 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 interception. Andre Ellington rushed the ball 11 times, 69 yards for 2 scores. Boyd carried the ball 20 times for 52 yards and 1 touchdown. He also put the ball on the ground 1 time. Take care of that football, Tajh. Frustrates me when you put the ball on the ground on the PS3. Howard carried the ball 10 times for 64 yards, and Roderick Hot Rod McDowell 10 carries for 15 yards and a touchdown. Put him in at the end zone. No real great receiving numbers in this one. Nuke Hopkins did have 6 receptions for 135 yards, and Bashad Breeland, who will be playing this weekend, and Corrico Wright also had an interception. Both of those guys had interceptions for the Tigers in the 42-21 victory against the Duke Blue Devils. Well, I've learned a couple of things in Tommy Bowden's reign, and I've learned a couple of things in Dabo Swinney's reign. And I've really learned a lot in the reign of offensive coordinator and guru Chad Morris. And that's this. When Clemson has superior talent, 9 times out of 10 they're going to get a win. And this season what we've seen is this Clemson team be able to dominate lesser opponents at times. It wasn't pretty early. The defense struggled, but we've seen defensive improvements. And I'm going to go with this defense, and I'm going to take this offense, and I'm going to get a little crazy here on this pick. I'm going to say your Clemson Tigers put up slightly less than a double nickel. I bet I'm the only person that picks it. I'm going to take your Clemson Tigers winning this ball game 52-24. I think Clemson explodes in Duke and prepares to close the season out with 3 home games. We'll see y'all next week. As always, y'all take care now, and go Tigers!